piece. This is about crash spacecraft may have left tiny but tough creatures on the moon. And as you can see here, this is what it looks like that was allegedly crashed on the moon. Now remember, Planet of the Fakes did a video about this kind of creature, and it was, I don't know, it was kind of cute but not too cute, because you never really see anything like this at all. You've heard of men on the moon, but what about moss piglets? Well, yeah, that's what this thing is, the moss piglet. Alright. Thousands of tardigrades, also known as water bears or moss piglets, were on board the Beresheet spacecraft when it crash landed on the moon in April. So you could call, so they are also known as water bears or moss piglets, because these are really originally called tardigrades. That's what they're really called. But they could be also known as water bears or moss piglets. The tiny creatures are incredibly hardy and can survive extremely low temperatures and harsh conditions, and the Art Mission Foundation, which sent them into space, believes some may have survived. So they're tiny little creatures, and of course they're incredibly hardy and can survive extremely low temperatures. Say, like, for example, maybe 10 below zero. That's low enough. And of course, harsh conditions, say like extremely hot weather or whatever they could survive in, because these things will not die ever. They just keep on surviving through everything. Tardigrades are pudgy little animals no longer than 1 millimeter. They live in water or in the film of water on plants like lichen or moss, and can be found all over the world in some of the most extreme environments, from icy mountains and polar regions to the balmy equator and the depths of the sea. Yeah, so these creatures are pudgy little animals, no longer than 1 millimeter. That's all it is. They live in the water or in the film of water on plants like lichen or moss. So that's how they survive. And of course, they can be found all over the world in some of the most extreme environments like icy mountains, polar regions, or the balmy equator and the depths of the sea. And of course, this is what it looks like in the water, or it could be the film water itself. In an attempt to create a Noah's Ark or a backup for the Earth, non-profit organizations, the Art Mission sent a lunar library, a stack of DVD-sized discs that acts as an archive of 30 million pages of information about the planet, to the moon. Along with the library, Art Mission sent human DNA samples and a payload of tardigrades, which had been dehydrated into space. So these have been dehydrated in space. And of course, Noah's Ark or backup for the Earth non-profit organizations, the Ark Mission sent a lunar library, a stack of DVD-sized discs that acts as an archive of 30 million pages about this plant or about this animal, because these kind of water bears or moss piglets, you could call them, they survive through everything you could think of. And of course, DNA samples and a payload of tardigrades, which had been dehydrated into space. And of course, there's, even if they don't have water or nothing up in space, they could still survive through it. We choose them because they are special. They are the toughest form of life we know of. They can survive particularly any planetary catalysm. They can survive in the vacuum of space. They can survive radiation. Nova Spivak, co-founder of the Arctic Mission Foundation, told CNN. So they chose them because they were very special. They are the toughest form of life we know of, and of course they survive particularly any planetary catalysm. So whatever they could survive on, that's what they survive on. They can survive in the vacuum of space, so that's what they can do. And of course, here's what the experiment looked like in space. Tardigrades have 8 legs with claws at the end, a brain and central nervous system, and a sucker-like pharynx behind their mouth, which can pierce food. So these creatures, they have 8 legs, and of course at the bottom, with that 8 legs are the claws at the end. So I'm not sure what they can hang on to, but that's what they have. And of course they got a brain and a central nervous system as well, along with a sucker-like pharynx behind their mouth. So, and of course they can pierce food with it, with their suckers. The Arctic mission put the creatures into a state of suspended animation, where the body dries out and the metabolism slows to as little as 0.1% of its normal rate. So they have suspended the animation of these creatures, and of course their body dries out and the metabolism slows. And of course it is little as 0.1% of it. And this is what it looks like, what it's doing. It's studying them under this thing or whatever it is. In that state, you can later rehydrate them in a laboratory, and they will wake up and be alive again, Spivak explained. Yeah, so you can rehydrate them later, and then of course, it would be in a laboratory, and they will wake up and be alive again. So that's what they do. They dehydrate them in space, and when you bring them down from space tonight, you can rehydrate them. Although the animals won't be able to reproduce or move around in their dehydrated state if they have survived the crash, if rehydrated, they could come back to life years later. So these animals were not to be able to reproduce or move around in their dehydrated state. Once they were dehydrated, their metabolism had slowed down severely. They have survived in the crash, of course, and if rehydrated, they could come back to life years later. Researchers hope that, along with the Tardigrades, the majority of the information from the lunar library survived the impact of the crash and could be used to regenerate human life in millions of years. Well, it'd be kind of hard to do that, to regenerate human life in millions of years, because as the years goes by, nobody's going to live forever. Researchers hope that, along with Tardigrades, the majority of the information from the lunar library survived the impact of the crash. And best case scenario is that the little library is fully intact, sitting on a nice sandy hillside on the moon for 1 billion years. In the distant future, it might be recovered by our descendants, or by a future form of intelligent life that might evolve along after we're gone, Spivak said. So there's a best case scenario for it. that the little library is fully intact, and of course sitting on a nice sandy hillside on the moon for 1 billion years. Now imagine what 1 billion years would do. And I mean, who would be around during that time? In the distant future, it might be recovered by our descendants or by a future form of intelligence life. So if there is descendants or if there's intelligent life, fine, they could do it. But it would be impossible. That might evolve long after we're gone, so who knows if it will happen or not. From the DNA in the cells that we included, you could clone us and regenerate the human race and other plants and animals, he added. So, taking the DNA and the cells that they included, you could clone us and regenerate the human race. So they're supposed to regenerate the human race and other plants and animals. So, and cloning is part of the evolution. I don't know. I can't say it is. I can't say it's not. So, and of course, there's a lot of clones floating around everywhere. So who knows what's going on with that? And of course, I have done a couple of videos about cloning, and I mean, by taking DNA and the cells, I don't know, but regenerate the human race and other plants and animals, maybe and maybe not. It all depends. Leave your comments below. I am out.